Good morning. Welcome back to Christian Companions. This is normally a Sunday school class at 10:30 for people 55 and older. We go through a curriculum, and we're actually starting something new today. It is the Standard Lesson Quarterly, so if you stumble upon this and you're confused what's happening here, it's because you're missing a book. But as for all of you who have been here before, welcome. Welcome back. This is September 6th. It's the first one in the book. Hopefully you already have the book. Today's going to look a little different because the powers that be at David C. Cook, our publisher for this material, forgot to send me the teacher guide, and so I am in the same book you all are in. Oof, already starting slow. Good thing I got my coffee with me. So it's going to look a little different because I am looking at exactly what you're looking at, not the teacher guide. So there's no introduction for my book. There's no, usually my book has an introduction, has a context, that kind of thing. I don't have really an introduction, but I can give you a little context. So usually their introduction is like today, for instance, we're talking about Joseph and kind of what happened to him up into his being sold into slavery. It's called Biased Love, this is. And normally the introduction would be, have you ever had a child that has been annoying or something to that effect? Because that's what this is going to be about. So, context though. Got a lovely family tree. We've been over this a few times in our class. If you weren't in those, basically this is a very cut down genealogy for Jacob and his 12 sons. 12 sons as this was happening. So basically there's a man named Terah who lived in what is modern day Iraq, basically, or Iraq, depending on how you pronounce it. He had 3 sons. One of them was Abram, who, because of God's promised covenant with him, became Abraham. Abraham and Sarah were in their 90s and had no children. So Abraham acquired a concubine through Sarah's as Sarah's maidservant and had Ishmael as a son. This is significant. The reason I put this, again, context, is not only do Muslims consider Ishmael to be their Abraham, effectively, he's kind of like or I guess he'd be their Jacob, really. He's kind of like the father of the Arab people. You can even see that in Ishmael's genealogy in Genesis. It goes through a list of his descendants, and a lot of them can be found in the Arabian Peninsula, which is significant for future. But in their 90s, they conceived Isaac. Isaac married Rebekah, and again, that's significant because Rebekah, I believe, is his cousin. I know it's either Terah's granddaughter or it's Terah's great-granddaughter. I can't remember off the top of my head now that I wrote this out and thought I remembered. Anyhow, so they get together, keeping it all in the family, just saying. So Isaac and Rebekah have Jacob. They also have twins, Jacob and Esau. Esau isn't really important to the Joseph story right now, so we're going to skip Esau. So they have Jacob. Jacob at first tries to marry Rachel and is tricked into marrying Leah. Then he marries Rachel, and then since Rachel was unable to have kids at the time, she gave, as an example, Abraham received Hagar to have children. Jacob received Zilpah and Bilhah, which we'll get into actually in the lesson today, as maidservant, concubine, wife kind of deals, to bear him children. And after all was said and done, he had 12 sons. It actually ends up with 13 sons, but as of right now in this story, we need to worry about the 12. So as you can see, Zilpah had 2, Bilhah had 2, Leah had 6, and Rachel had just the 1, again, at this time in the Bible. Later she'll have another. So that's kind of the context of where we're coming from. And Joseph is beloved because Jacob loved Rachel more than Leah, which is probably why this is called biased love, because one loved the other more so than the others. So that's what we're looking at. I will say real quick, the order of the children is in no particular order. It's just the order in which I remembered them. So don't look at that and go, wow, I thought Gad was a lot younger than Judah, which is true. I just wrote it that way. Anyhow, that's my context and introduction. And that's all I got. So hopefully that was sufficient to what we're about to talk about today, which is Genesis 37, 2 through 11, 37, 23 through 24a, and then 28. Now, again, I have what you're looking at. I don't have any extra stuff, so this might be quick. This might be short. I don't know what this is going to look like because I've only read through it once and have some notes, and we'll see what we're dealing with. This is, if anything, this is the most normal video of them all because I'm coming in from behind a little bit. So if anything, that makes more sense than what we're used to. So here we go. Genesis, we'll start 37, 2 through 11. I'll just read. It looks like I'll start with 2 through 4. Again, I forget how this is ordered because I don't usually look at yearbooks. So 2 through 4. This is the account of Jacob's family line. Joseph, a young man of 17, was tending the flocks with his brothers, the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives, and he brought their father a bad report about them. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons, because he had been born to him in his old age. And he made an ornate robe for him. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. I guess that is some important context that I did miss before we get into it. Jacob's name is now Israel. He got that because he was blessed. Israel literally means wrestles with God, because Jacob wrestled with God in a story before this, and he said he had God pinned, which is impressive, and he was basically like, bless me, please. I'll let you go if you bless me. So he was blessed, and he was named Israel, for he had fought with God and had survived. So that's important to know, because I could see some people might see Israel and go, thought we were talking about Jacob. Anyhow, so let's look at this. 2a, this is the account of Jacob's family line. So the book of Genesis is organized partially by the use of the Hebrew phrase translated, these are the generations of. Used for the last time here, each instance emphasizes the continuation of life and introduces stories concerned with those lives in some way. Importantly, Jacob was the grandson of Abraham, who was given great covenant promises by God. Yeah, the story of Abraham starts with a great lineage up to Terah, and then it says, and then Terah had 3 sons, and it goes into the story of Abraham, and then Isaac, and then so on and so on. Generations, I think I can make the argument that generations are always important. I think it's really nice to know, I think it's really important to know where you come from. I always say, quietly to myself more than anything, to know where you're going, you first must know where you've been. That's an important thing. And so that's why it's important to know who you're from. Just, even for health. Like, most of you know, it's like my dad, if my grandfather had a bad ticker and then my dad has a bad ticker, looks like I'm going to have a bad ticker. So keep an eye out. Anyhow, we'll keep moving. 2b, or you know what, not to be. I kid. Here we go. Joseph's birth is recorded in Genesis 30, 22 through 24. Genesis 33, 1 through 2 mentions how Jacob placed Rachel and Joseph in the rear of the entourage as Jacob prepared to meet Esau. Since Rachel was Jacob's preferred wife and Joseph was her only son so far, Jacob wanted to reduce the risk of their being harmed should Esau come seeking revenge for Jacob's previous deceitful actions. Now I regret not putting Esau on the board. I forgot that this was mentioned first off. Here we go. Jacob was a very successful shepherd, and he intended for Joseph to follow in his footsteps. We see Joseph learning the family operation. In this relatively dry region, it was necessary to move the flocks and herds around to provide them with daily food. Sometimes herdsmen would have to go long distances to find that food. Yeah, obscene distances. When Joseph is basically attacked by his brothers, which we're going to skip today. We hit the tail end of it in 37:23. But basically he's attacked by his brothers, and it's because his father, Israel, said, you need to go find your brothers and see what they're doing. He travels a day's journey, finds out they had moved on to the next watering spring, and has to go another day's journey just to find them. And so they're like a few days walking distance away from everything, which is a long ways. So to say it's a long ways is not an oxymoron, or is not incorrect. Doesn't matter. We're going to keep going. Bilhah, 2C. The sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives, and he brought their father a bad report about them. So Bilhah and Zilpah are called Jacob's wives, though the actual status of each was that of an attendant, servant, and eventual concubine. Zilpah was given to Leah when she married Jacob. Bilhah was given to Rachel at the same time. According to the custom of the time, children born to the wife's servants by her husband were counted as the wife's own children. Bilhah's sons were Dan and Naphtali. Zilpah's were Gad and Asher. Yeah, I mean, that's not much needs to be said. They're given to the wives give it to the husbands so that the husbands can bear children, and the children are technically the servants' owners' kids. See what I'm saying? Yeah, so pretty straightforward there. We'll keep going. So, 2D. I must have blown past that. And he brought their fathers a bad report about them. So the content of Joseph's report about these brothers is unknown. The Hebrew word translated bad does not necessarily imply something evil. It may mean that Joseph's brothers have done something disrespectful or mean to their younger brother. It could also be that Joseph brought word of a poor work ethic or other misbehavior. Yeah, I mean, I don't think we need to parse this. It could have been that, like, they needlessly shepherd in the wrong direction, or didn't get them to clean water, or they were letting wolves take a couple sheep a day. It could be anything. A lot of things can make you a bad shepherd. So I don't think we need to parse that any more than they had done something wrong. So 3. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons, because he had been born to him in his old age, and he made an ornate robe for him. So here we see Jacob's name, Israel, given to him after the wrestling match in Genesis 32:22 through 30. Its use reminds the readers that God's blessed Israel when he changed the patriarch's name. Yeah, so previously mentioned. Sorry, I gotta move this because it's annoying me. Here we go. While Joseph's tattling didn't cultivate good brotherly feelings, Israel's favoritism likely caused even more tension. Jacob made no secret of the greater love he had for Joseph. Not only was Joseph one of Rachel's 2 sons, but he was also born late in Jacob's life. Jacob was about 90, based on Joseph's age relative to Jacob's, when the whole family arrived in Egypt. One way Jacob expressed his love was by making an ornate robe only for him. This robe was not more than a jacket or winter coat. It stood out against any garment the brothers had been given. Ornate. We all know the story of Joseph in the Technicolor Dreamcoat, right? Donny Osmond. Everybody loves it. Not true. It's all right. But some of you might be mad at me for saying that. I don't know. I thought it was all right. Anyway. But it's ornate probably because it's a nice coat. It's a nice overcoat. It's also probably pretty colors. Like, it is probably nice to wear and looks good. Again, colors can come from anything. You can get colors at this time. You would crush different things and like mix it with oil or water and get colors, and then you had to make dyes, and it was a whole process. And so dyes and different colors were expensive. There's a reason purple is royal. I didn't do that on purpose, but purple was royal because purple was so hard to make. You had to get certain kinds of flowers or certain kinds of beetles, all these different things that were very specific, very hard to find. And so purple was expensive and hard to find, therefore royal. Things that were common, like you could make anything brown, you bleach anything, like white was pretty easy to do. So it was a pretty drab time to be living in. So to have an ornate, beautiful coat meant you were beloved in a big, big way. So yeah, this was a significant deal. Verse 4, when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. So the coat became a physical, tangible reminder not only to Joseph, but also to his brothers that Jacob played favorites. Simply by looking at Joseph in the robe, the brothers could see that their father loved Joseph more than any of the rest of them. Yeah, quick story. So when I was a teenager, my parents, my dad specifically wanted me to mow. And so he taught me how to mow. He taught me how to get the mower started and all this different kind of stuff. And I learned to mow. Well, it turned out, and I didn't know this, that my older sister really wanted to mow. Like, she thought it was kind of fun and cathartic, and it would be, we had a big yard, so we had a big riding lawnmower, and she had never really learned how. And my parents hadn't, I don't think my parents really thought of that, like that she wanted to. I don't know if she ever expressed that. And if she ever sees this, she might be like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not making this up, though, I promise, because I remember vividly. And I remember her being upset about me learning and her not, because she was older than me. And it became this thing of, I remember her thinking, or I remember me thinking, I hope she doesn't think that they love me more because they taught me how to mow. And I remember thinking this, because I don't want to mow. Like, this isn't a treat. This is a punishment. Like, I don't want to do this. And so every time I read this, I think of that. I think of that experience in my life of, here's something that here's something that what's the word? Here's something that I'm going to give you to show you love. And sometimes I'm sure when I have a second child, like, sometimes you just don't think things through as a parent. I don't know what I'm trying to say. Basically, every time I hear this thing of like, oh, he was given a coat and dad loves him more. I think it would have taken more than that. I think Israel was clear through more than just, here's a good gift of his favoritism. That was a long story for nothing, and I'm sorry it took us so long to get there. So, verse 5 through 11. Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him all the more. He said to them, "Listen to this dream I had. We were binding sheaves of grain out in the field when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it." His brothers said to him, "Do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us?" And they hated him all the more because of his dream and what he had said. When he had another dream, and he told his brothers, "Listen," he said, "I had another dream, and this time the sun and the moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me." When he told his father as well as his brothers, his father rebuked him and said, "What is the dream you had? Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow down to the ground before you?" His brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind, which is important. So, verse 5, Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him all the more, which makes sense. The commentary says, "Now comes another reason for Joseph's brothers to have hated him. His dreams, Joseph was one of the few to whom God spoke in this manner. Equally important is the fact that Joseph later demonstrated that God-given ability to interpret the dreams of others. This ability opened doors for Jacob's family to come to Egypt." Yeah, this is super important. One thing I will say, I think this story has affected so many people's theology throughout the years of, well, I had this dream that this happened. Do you think God's trying to tell me something? There's like 4 times this happened in the Bible. It's like, out of the billions, trillions, quadrillions of people that have ever lived, God's only done this that we know in the Bible like single-digit times. So be weary of that, or leery of that, I should say, not weary. Be leery of that. And if somebody says, "I had a dream, I think God's trying to communicate this to me," really make sure, because not only does he have a dream, but he has the ability to interpret dreams. So even when God gives you a dream, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be clear cut, and you're going to have somebody tell you what that means. Pretty important. Just a quick theological note. Anyhow, let's keep going. 6 and 7, he said to them, "Listen to this dream I had. We were binding sheaves of grain out in the field when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it." So, this dream uses images from a grain harvest. Men and women would go out with hand sickles and cut the grain. As they did, they gathered the cut stalks into sheaves. The sheaves were stacked in the field to await transport to the place of threshing. To bow down is an act of great respect or worship. Here it signifies that someone else has, or will have, power over those who are doing the bowing. Why would Joseph think it prudent to tell his brothers about a dream in which they were under his power? Being a very young man, around age 17, Joseph simply may not have developed a sense of tact or appropriateness, or perhaps he sensed already that his dream had come from God and was a word his brothers needed to hear. I think it's more the fact that he's 17 and he just had a dream that he would have power over his brothers who hate him, and probably visibly and viscerally hate him. Like, he's aware of the situation. At 17, I think he knows what's going on. Like, he has a coat of many colors. His father is training him to take over the family business. It's pretty clear what's going on. I think Joseph's, I don't know if he's being sinful, but I think he's like, hey, want to hear a cool dream I had, guys? I'm going to rule over you one day. I think it's a little bit of that, personally. But we'll keep going. Verse 8, his brothers said to him, do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us? And they hated him all the more because of his dream and what he had said. And, I mean, that makes sense. I mean, he's 17, but his oldest brother is probably well into his 30s, if not older. Like, can you imagine a 17-year-old coming to you and going, you're going to bow down to me soon? That'd be pretty crazy. The symbolism of the dream did not confuse Joseph's brothers. Joseph saw himself as one who would reign over the brothers. They immediately grasped its meaning and hated him all the more. The brothers recognized that their younger brother was placed above them. It is possible that the brothers have already discussed killing Joseph. They did not know how important the fulfillment of Joseph's dreams would be for the men's own lives. True. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Yeah. If you were told somebody's going to reign over you, and it's like some snot-nosed kid who your dad loves, yeah, no, you're not. Verse 9, then he had another dream, and he told it to his brothers. Listen, he said, I had another dream, and this time the sun and the moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me. Joseph, keep it down. For Joseph, the second dream likely provided verification that the message of the first was true, since the two dreams concern the same subject. Joseph's second dream has implications as serious as the first. Not only would the 11 stars representing his 11 brothers bow down to him, so would Jacob and Leah, which I can't imagine, even if you're a beloved son, if Emmy came up to me and said in a couple years, hey, Dad, you're going to bow down to me someday, I'd go, okay, listen here, punk. Like, go to your room, you're grounded. That's crazy. And then she said, God gave me that dream. Then I go, well, now you're even crazier. Just kidding. So, verse 10, when he told his brothers as well as his let me start over. When he told his father as well as his brothers, his father rebuked him and said, what is the dream you had? Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow down to the ground before you? Jacob was bothered by the dream and rebuked Joseph, fair, for sharing it. It was hard to believe that the next to youngest son, Joseph, would be the one to whom Jacob, Leah, and the 11 brothers would bow down. Jacob was no stranger to dreams. He had dreamed as he departed from Canaan and traveled toward Haran. And Haran, he told Rachel and Leah of another dream, one in which God told him to return to Canaan. Even so, he did not seem to grasp that these dreams were more than fanciful nocturnal fabrications on Joseph's part, which we've all been there, right? If somebody's prayerful and they say, I feel like God's leading me to this, a lot of times people in the church will go, okay, is God really leading you to that, or do you just want to go there and you're using God's name to get you there, even if they've said that before? It's hard. Basically, this is a tale as old as time and continues to persist in the church. I feel like God's leading me to this, and people go, really? Or do you want to go there and you're using God as an excuse? Skepticism is rampant, but sometimes you just need to trust that God's doing the right thing. All of 11. His brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind, which again, you would too. Let's read all of 11 here, 11a and b. Perhaps the brothers were beginning to wonder whether Joseph's dreams have some real meaning to them, or possibly they wished they could be the ones having such dreams. The emotion of jealousy suggests a more significant passion than even hatred. The emotion magnifies the possibility that their feelings would spill out into violence. And then 11b, kept the matter in mind, means that Jacob will watch for one or more events through which Joseph's dreams will be fulfilled. Yeah, I mean, it also, again, if your youngest son is telling his 11 brothers, hey, I'm going to be king over you, like I'm going to be powerful over you, you'd probably be like, I'm going to make sure they don't do anything crazy to him, as well as, well, if God told him this, I need to keep an eye out. So, this is what's going on. We'll keep pushing through. So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the ornate robe he was wearing, and they took him and threw him into the cistern. So when the Midianite, and then verse 28, so when the Midianite merchants came by, his brother pulled Joseph up out of the cistern and sold him for 20 shekels of silver to the Ishmaelites who took him to Egypt. Told you Ishmaelites, that's important. 23 through 24a. which we basically just read. Jacob had sent Joseph to his brothers who were tending the herds. When the brothers saw Joseph approaching, they decided it was a good time to kill him. His brother Reuben, however, suggested instead that Joseph be thrown into the cistern, or a well, however you want to look at that. The act of stripping Joseph out of his robe symbolically stripped him of his status as Jacob's favorite. I think it was probably more than symbolic. It was probably literal. It likely represents more than anything the brothers' resentment of the favoritism that Joseph received from their father. When they decided to pretend he had died, the robe became evidence in support of their story. Their revenge continued when they threw Joseph into the cistern. It was impossible for him to climb out of it. Yeah, that's basically, we missed a whole part of that before 23 and in between 24 and 28. Basically, they were like, they see him coming from a ways off, because again, they're days away from their home, tending to the flocks. Israel had sent Joseph on towards them, and they're discussing, let's just kill him. Like, let's get this over with. We hate him. And luckily, Reuben is there, and he says, let's not kill him. Let's just beat him up a little and make him prove a point. But little does he know they're going to actually sell him into slavery. So, 28, in the final verse, are the Midianites and Ishmaelites two names for the same group of people? On one hand, Genesis 37:36 says that the Midianites sold Joseph to Potiphar, while Genesis 39:1 says it was the Ishmaelites. This suggests they were the same people by two names. On the other hand, some scholars suggest that the Midianite merchants acted as middlemen for the Ishmaelites and were not actually part of the same people. The two groups shared Abraham as a common ancestor. Genesis 16 and Genesis 25 are in there. The value of 20 shekels of silver is uncertain. The sale of Joseph brought money or monetary profit to the brothers, as well as providing them with a way of enacting their revenge without actually killing him. The brothers then slaughtered a goat, smeared its blood on the robe they tore up, and presented the robe to their father as evidence that the favorite son was dead. Genesis 37:31-35. Meanwhile, Joseph was taken to Egypt, presumably never to be heard from again. Yeah, so... I think 20 shekels was just a showing of how much they got for him. I don't think it'd be different if it was the same amount of money that Judas got for Jesus, for betraying Jesus, but it's not really. And then the argument of Midianites to Ishmaelites, I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but let's say the first one's true. The first idea of being Ishmaelites and Midianites are the same people. Then they sold him into slavery. They sold him and got rid of him. Let's say Midianites are middlemen for Ishmaelites. Then the brothers still just beat him up, sold him into slavery. Like, either way, the story doesn't change who the Midianites and Ishmaelites are. If I'm going to be honest, I personally think that they're either... Actually, I don't even... You know what? I'm not even going to take a stand on this. I don't know. It could be both, neither, or either. But I think what's really important here is the fact that he's selling them to... They're selling their brother to a faraway country, so they think he'll be gone forever. But they're also selling him right now to relatives. Like, these are... not so distant cousins. It's not like this is generations away. Like, this isn't like how I'm related to the first settlers in America, right? Like, we're related, but it's been a couple hundred years. This is like a generation off. Like, this is basically their cousins, like their second cousins maybe. And so they're selling them to people that they've probably seen around and know, like this isn't a stretch. And so I think that's significant as well. The idea that they're selling somebody from their home, their brother from basically Israel into Gentile hands, into familial relation, but away hands. Anyhow, all that to say, I don't think it matters. I think what matters here is they got rid of him and sold him to Egypt. So, yeah, and that's it. It probably would be longer had I had my book. It feels like, I don't know how long this was. It feels short. But yeah, next week I called them. It's supposed to be coming next week. So hopefully we'll be able to go through this and I'll have more to tell you other than what you already have in front of you. But I hope you still enjoyed it. I hope if you didn't, you'll stick around and come back to see me next week, where we'll continue Joseph's story for September 13th. September 13th, which is also South Rock 1. Keep an eye out for that. I know some of you aren't coming to church. Some of you are coming to church. Some of you might not know what this is going on when I say South Rock 1. Go to the website, call me, call us. We have a lot of information. Basically, on September 13th, we're not having a service here. We're having a service at everybody's houses, and people can get invited, and you can have people over if you feel comfortable with that. And if you don't, then it's the time to worship at home, and we'll have questions. And it's a whole thing I can't get into because I'll go on for a long time. So if you're interested in what South Rock 1 is and you've never heard it or seen it yet, go to the website, southrockchristian.com, call the church, call me if you have my number, call any one of us, we'll have information. So, but I'll still post a Christian Companions video for that day, even though church does technically look a little different that week. That's what I was trying to say. Whew. I'm full of coffee and just running a mile a minute. That's pretty slow. 100 miles a minute. See how I'm doing? Anyway, I miss you all. I wish you were all in here to laugh at me and how ridiculous I sound right now. And I can't wait to have you back in here. But until then, I'll talk to you later and I'll see you later. Bye.